I'm excited that I'm here with Maz, who is a doctor of Chinese medicine and looks after me with everything to do with my pelvic health, my pelvic floor prolapse health. So I'm super excited because you're going to explain how me having such a crazy busy year, making a movie and doing all the other things I've done, help lean to my spleen being deficient, which all help to lean to me resulting with a pelvic floor prolapse. Welcome, Maz.
Thanks, Jen. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, let's dive straight in.
Okay.
This is a big thing, and we might start with part of your story because you've had a prolapse a lot younger than me.
Yes,
Start
yes.
there about your journey with prolapse.
So mine was very mild, and it happened in my early 30s. So at the time, I was doing my second degree, my Chinese medicine degree, and working full time. Awesome. Yeah. And it was a full-time degree load as well. And on top of that, like exercising a lot, having a busy social life, doing all the things. And studying really hard. And I think I was possibly also doing at that same time, I was doing a diploma in classical Chinese medicine herbalism. So I was doing a lot of stuff and a lot of learning, digesting a lot of stuff mentally and trying to, make sense of all the new information. And I was practicing yoga every day back then. And I noticed in some of the poses that things were feeling a little bit uncomfortable in the seated poses. And I'm like, that doesn't feel quite right. I don't think that is how it normally feels every day.
Right.
So I realized, and I had been feeling super tired, like that real physical fatigue, like dragging my limbs around. And fortunately, from my studies, I knew that the organ system called the spleen is responsible for holding our organs in place and our bits and holding our blood in the vessels. So when this happened, I thought, makes sense, because my spleen had been smashed by all the study that I'd been doing, because the spleen also digests all of our thinking experiences as well as our food. So it had been definitely overloaded. So I was onto it straight away. I stopped doing all the physical stuff. I was practicing like a Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga, so pretty intense.
Wow.
Yeah, like 2 hours a day.
I love that you're everything or nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get it.
Yeah. Cram it all in there, right?
Yeah.
So I did some yin yoga until things healed. It didn't take too long for me for things to resolve back, because it was quite mild and I was onto it as soon as I started to feel it. And I really looked after myself with spleen nourishing foods. I backed off with all the thinking and excess study for a while, and just really had to go to ground, because I knew that if I didn't, things would progress. So, yeah.
I didn't listen to my body. I realized now in hindsight, my body was giving me hints that my spleen, and through with acupuncturists through all the years when I've had treatments, my body defaults to spleen deficiency, and I've known that. And this year has been really full on. And one of the things I had let go was my regular preventative. So I know that this would have got picked up earlier if I hadn't have done that, but I did. And now I get to live with the result. So, and interesting, I'd even had, my body was like giving me hints this was coming and I wasn't hearing it. And so I'd had this pain in my foot that felt like a nerve pain since March. So making a documentary and still running all the normal full load of life. And went and had all the scans and MRIs and everything. And they're going, there's nothing wrong. Okay, I've got this burning pain in my foot. And when I finally came to you for prolapse, you went, oh, that's spleen meridian.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like, so now it's managed and it's okay. And it's like, so tell us about the spleen and why burning the candle at both ends, just taking on too full a load, can show up with things like a prolapse eventually. Like I let it go for too long.
That is a great question. So the spleen, maybe I'll back up with saying that there's a whole lot of organ systems in Chinese medicine, like the spleen organ system and the stomach organ system, the heart, and so on. And they are so much more than just the organ that we think of in biomedical terms. So when I talk about spleen, that's shorthand for the spleen organ, but also the spleen meridian, which runs down the inside of our legs. And all of the spleen functions that govern the balancing of our body, mind, and soul. So across those areas, the spleen has the function of, being in the digestive area. It has a major role of absorbing our food, digesting and assimilating nutrients, and making sure that all the lovely food that we eat is being processed well and being put to good use. The spleen also holds, as we mentioned before, holds organs in place, and it governs the limbs and the flesh and the muscles. So it helps us to feel strong and vibrant in our limbs and have energy to stay upright and feel good as we go about our day. In addition to digesting food, it also digests life experiences and mental things that we ingest as well. So when people are studying or doing a lot of mental load stuff, that's the spleen that's taking care of that as well. So like you, I have also, like, spleen is my sort of
default.
Yeah, that's what I drop back into. And I am like a perennial scholar. Like, I'm always studying, and I always know when I've overdone it, because my appetite just goes, or I start to feel a bit pukey when I eat, and it's like I've totally overloaded my spleen, got to back off the books for a while, and just
me learning how to make a documentary.
yes,
My brain was just nuts. So much learning to work out all the moving parts and how to do that. So it all makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot of digestion and integration with you creating that beautiful film that you created.
Yeah, huge. All right. So with that, I come and see you nowadays weekly, and I'm having treatments, and it's a combination between my fanny physios and you. I'm getting, I'm heading in the right direction with it, which is cool. And I know that acupuncture has always been one of my modalities I've loved for decades. My body really responds well to it. So within and the disgusting mud tasting herbs you've been
yes, you're welcome.
So you do a variety of kind of treatments, and I know you're going to tell us about a link later where people can go and grab an ebook exactly on, you've written about spleen and pelvic floor and stuff. So hang on for that at the end, guys. But in the meantime, is there preventative stuff that people can do? Is there a place to start with that?
Absolutely. And actually, Chinese medicine is ideally all about prevention before symptoms take hold, right? So we're all about flowing with the seasons and flowing with life, supporting our bodies, minds, and souls, so that things like this don't pop up, or so we can catch the messages earlier. Yeah. So probably the biggest place to start is looking after our digestion, because the spleen governs that area. And like many of us who are busy in this, modern culture and stretched in all different directions, we can take the load off the spleen by having cooked and warm food and drink. So
no cold, no ice.
No acai bowls, no smoothies. This is the one I get the most pushback on. People are like, oh, I love my salads. Yeah. And they're delicious.
I love blueberries.
Yeah.
Old blueberries and blackberries. I devour them.
Yes.
And so I've been able to have them, but I've warmed them up on the stove.
That's right. Very good.
Cinnamon and ginger powder to it, and have it like a coolie over thing.
Yes.
And that's worked wonderfully on my warm oats, warm protein oats that I make and stuff. So there's ways around it. But
there are ways around it.
Thought of. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what you just described is a really lovely way of balancing yin and yang, because we consider most fruit to be yin, so it's cooling and nourishing fluids, and yang stuff is warming and drying, which is what we need when things are hanging out. We need to boost the spleen a bit.
I'm trying to warm and dry my fanny.
That's right.
And everything will go back where it's meant to be, or at least close enough to where it's meant to be.
Yeah, that's right. And Chinese medicine is about it's very much about the middle way, and about making things workable for people where they are, and just making small changes, which might seem like big changes when you're used to cold and raw stuff, but those small changes can make really profound differences, as I've seen throughout my work as well. So that's a big one. So generally I suggest to my patients to just be mindful of the temperature of food and drink when they put it in their mouth. So if it's warmer than your mouth, you're adding to that spleen energy, that spleen fire. But
Right.
anything colder than your mouth, colder than body temperature, you're taking the spleen's energy, the spleen's yang, to then digest that food. So if we're already a bit depleted, then it's taking energy away rather than building up those reserves. Yeah. So that's one area. The other area would be definitely to clear out the mind where possible, or try to not. I know. So
Okay.
things like, and again, I get like a bit of pushback with this, but things like things
Oh,
like meditation, journaling, or even body-based repetitive practices like slow rhythmic walking, like a walking meditation, not
yeah.
with podcasts or music or conversations, but actually being present in the body. Things that can help to clear all those browser windows that seem to amass themselves in our heads, and all the thoughts that are whirring around in there. I find journaling can be really amazing at just doing a brain dump of all of the things that are going through our heads as well.
Yeah, I'm big on brain dumping, and then it's there. I don't have to think about it. I can refer back to it.
That's right. Yeah.
Walking meditation and chanting is invaluable to me. I remember. Sorry, you go.
Oh, I was going to say that the chanting is really beautiful too, because it's rhythmic and steady, and the spleen enjoys rhythm, routine, containment. So things that are repetitive like that can be really quite soothing and nourishing for the spleen.
Nice.
Yeah.
I remember when I learned, just basic TCM stuff 30 odd years ago. It made total sense to me, just as an ongoing thing. No spleen issues or not, just to not have ice cold things. But I hadn't, so I don't do icy cold drinks, and never have, because it makes sense that your gut's like a big crock pot and we want to keep it warm.
Yes.
I hadn't made the connection of and so we think, as naturopaths, we think blue is cooling. And so blueberries, blackberries, they're naturally cooling anyway. However, definitely not to eat them in that way with a spleen deficiency.
That's right. And look, some people can thrive on raw stuff, and if they are, that's great. But generally, they're not the people coming to see me for help. So if they're wanting help with something, there's obviously something in their current way that they're doing things that maybe needs a bit of a tweak. So yeah, we're all different, and different things work for everyone, different people.
Yeah, totally. And I say to people, if your body is rocking 100%, fantastic, keep doing it.
Exactly.
If not, try this on and see how your body responds.
Yes, absolutely. Like, it's free to try. It's such a simple tweak. And I've seen just this simple change of cooked and warm. I've seen it make profound differences for people with things like chronic hay fever, like chronic drippy noses. Even for one person who had malabsorption and low iron. So just tweaking that warm food just allowed the spleen to absorb maximum goodness out of the food that they were eating. So that was a really lovely win as well. So yeah, I generally,
it's so common now, it's insane.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I just always look at traditional cultures that have stood the test of time, and I look at how do they eat. And I know in my travels throughout Southeast Asia and China, and you would have in your travels as well seen how much cooked food there is, even in hot climates, right? Hot drinks.
In the summer, I go to China and Taiwan, those kind of countries teaching, and middle of summer, it's so stinking hot, humid, and we'll sit down, there'll be plates of warm bitter melon.
Yes.
Which is so foul, but
Yeah.
they eat it in the middle of summer because they know it'll, help balance out the body. And so they eat mindfully. We eat for pleasure. They eat for health.
Yes, I was amazed. I spent a bit of time living in Thailand, and I was amazed at how much it was common knowledge about the different heating and cooling qualities about foods. I remember just being so impressed and thinking, oh, I'd love to know that. And now, we're working towards that. But yes, it's interesting going back to the bitter melon, because it's bitter. It has often bitter flavors can have a cooling quality in the body. And that one's also really great for draining dampness in the body, which when we've got humid conditions like we often do in the middle of summer in those places, it's great for ushering that like stickiness and dampness out of the body as well, but without having to have cold stuff, right? So it's such a nice balance. Yeah.
So you've had me having more pungence.
Yes.
So tell everyone about pungents.
Pungents.
What are they and why more pungents in our diet?
Pungents, yes, such
I
a
love
great word.
pungents, by the way. I've got permission to eat much more pungent food. What?
I love pungents. And so pungents are things like your ginger, cinnamon, cloves. So they're aromatic, and we would call them dispersing or spreading in Chinese medicine. So we're very much a medicine that is concerned with the different flavors of foods and herbs and their therapeutic effects in the body. So when you think about, the opposite of pungent, you've got sour or astringing, which is like a lemon. And if you think of eating a lemon, your tongue tells you straight away what that does, right? It kind of shrinks back into itself. So pungent flavors, they disperse, they dry out. It's like sort of if you've got a flooded room, it's like putting a fan on the floor to dry things out. So if there's dampness, it'll dry it out. Also, when there's been any sagging or loss of yang or loss of lift of the spleen, then those pungent flavors help to create lift and movement, and help to start to usher those organs back into place.
Something I didn't realize, because I'm a big ginger consumer. And so I grow my own ginger, dry it, pickle it. I do everything with ginger because I love it so much. But you were talking about how dried ginger has more heat.
Yes, so we differentiate between fresh ginger, which we use to create a sweat. So it has more of a surface effect. So if someone's just caught a chill, like they've just gone out in the rain or copped some aircon on their neck, which is another Chinese medicine no-no, then we would do like fresh ginger with other herbs like cinnamon and honey or licorice root in that situation. Dry ginger we use for a deeper level, which is to warm the spleen and warm the digestion. So that's got more of a intensely heating in place rather than a heating on the surface of the body. And then we also use charred ginger, which we use when there's like heavy periods, for example, or there's like a loss. So we use that to astringe things in place. So the same herb, 3 very different uses.
Wow.
And, with your pickled ginger as well, if we think about sour, which we talked about, so then that's balancing out that pungent flavor of ginger. So it's interesting that we've got that lovely yin and yang balance there as well.
Yeah, I tend to use it in salads, cold food.
Yeah.
I throw it into stir fries too, but I love,
Yeah.
I love that, pickling my own gingers too. So
Yeah.
if there were a handful of, what would be your top tips? Because a lot of my biggest demographic on this podcast are from 40-year-old women on. It's the main demographic, 40, 45. I had not birthed a child, and I have talked about my prolapse on this before. So, I was not the person to expect to get a prolapse. I'm postmenopausal for sure, 62, but I'd never birthed a child. I had not done any Kegels. I'd never done anything to even think that I was a candidate for a prolapse. And yet I get through my default, which is going way too fast all the way through my life, I was up for this.
Yeah.
What would be for those other people who are listening, that whether they go fast or not, but they're coming into that? I actually read the statistic. It's 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 women postmenopausal who end up with prolapse, whether it's just with bladder leakage or whatever. I never got that, but everything we've done has even toned all that up. Everything I've been really improving that. That wasn't I had no hint that was coming. It wasn't. But what kind of things could people do in advance? No cold food. That's done.
No cold food, yes.
Have more pungents.
Yes, have more pungents. Just to go back to throw a question at you, though, you said that your body was giving you some messages, though, that things were, so what, so you already had some little inklings, right, that things were maybe a little bit fatigued?
Well, now that I know my foot was spleen channel, definitely I was getting like insane nerve pain at night, hot burning nerve pain. But when I was busy through the day, it was there definitely. However, it was worse at night. Interesting that when you're relaxing, it would come up bigger. Yeah. I also realize now, because and I love that you're a surfer as well. So I was training to improve my upper body strength. So I was doing a lot of bench press, but dumbbells, and I'd put the dumbbells on my chest to sit up. So I'd have 15 or 20 kilo dumbbells. And I would just do a sit up. Never thought to tighten pull up my pelvic floor before I did it. And I actually realized the feeling, if I really look back, while I was really working that a couple of times a week, I could feel it. Now I really know what my pelvic floor feels like. I could realize literally I was bearing down and creating it. So I think it was coming definitely all of this year.
Yeah.
But talking to the physios, it's probably been hanging around for a few years. So the physios were explaining that most of it, the depth of most of our vaginas is about 6 inches. And that I was probably dropped at just an age, life, all those things, probably dropped about 3 for the last couple of years.
Yeah, right.
And then so when I did that big cough after again, and the other thing I never realized was the influence of air pressure. Flying. I've flown so heavily for over 20 years. You know, I was on and off planes 9 months a year, bragging about it. But the month pre this, I, you know, up to Thailand and back, which is only 9 for me. It's 9-hour flight each way. It's actually not that exciting. I don't think. New Zealand and a couple of Aussie flights, and came home from the New Zealand flight, and it literally just went, no, I can't hold it anymore. And so air pressure influenced a lot as well.
Yes.
So I think it was hanging around. It was hanging. Now it does hang.
Well, the reason I ask is because it leads me into the first part of my answer, which is tuning into your body. So I think listening to those quiet little whispers before they become a scream. And I know that that's, you know, that looks different for different people. So that would be my first one. It's like, get curious about different feelings or different intuitions maybe that you're having about your body, or if you notice something is feeling a bit different, like, you know, my experience with when I was in yoga and things just weren't sitting right, literally, when I was in certain poses, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually address this straight away because of what I learned, I know how it can go. So that would be the first one. It's interesting when you
explain. I will explain physically if women are going, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, what to feel.
Yes, please.
Once it popped out for me, literally, once it dropped down, and for probably a good month or so initially of treatments, I still couldn't sit properly. I had to sit on one cheek or another. So the feeling for me is like there's a tampon when it's dropped. So it goes back whenever I rest up, but it would drop down. And so if I was in the shower, and if I was, you know, touching just at that vaginal kind of opening, there's like a bulge.
Yes.
So I had a stage 4, which means it dropped right down.
Yeah.
And just outside my inner lips, because everyone's got inner and outer lips, feel a bulge.
Yeah.
And depending on what I'd been straining or doing, that was my first thing. That fuck that is not meant to be there.
Yeah, that's right.
And then sitting on a chair was incredibly uncomfortable. So that's how I felt it. And the feeling when I was walking initially, when it first happened, was like I felt like I was walking like a crab and like it was pinching. That's being very real, but that's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
So it mightn't be like yours wasn't.
So for me, so I think for me, I noticed G-strings just weren't an option when it happened. I'm like,
I ditched the G-string that day. I've worn G-string for decades. I had to go and buy bikini briefs. G-string. Still can't.
Yeah, I was like, this is something's definitely not quite right here. So that's how, because mine was more mild, but that's definitely how I felt it. And then in all the different like seated poses, various like splits, or even like, you know, one leg bent to the side, things felt different. Like I could feel there was, some rubbing of the tissue there that wouldn't have been there, or just pressure, like a bearing down pressure. So I was like, okay, I need to just stop and address this. So yes, I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Along, if you start feeling any of those things, go and see, you know, someone like a Maz or someone like a fanny physio, get a diagnosis, and then you can work out the treatment plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I just wanted to comment too, the spleen, as we mentioned, likes routine and being grounded in place. It's the earth element in Chinese medicine out of the 5 elements. So it's interesting that for someone who is being a fabulous jet setter 9 months of the year and not having a consistent like ground base, the spleen, it's not surprising to me that the spleen was the one that was like, I need help. Yeah.
And I'm an earth
grounded.
sign.
Yeah.
I'm such an earth sign. I'm a Taurus, like, and Taurus born in the year of the ox. I'm so earth, it's ridiculous. Yeah, and I was in the plains all the time.
Yeah.
No,
far from the earth, Jen. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, so definitely listen to your body. The other thing is things like long periods of standing is not amazing for the spleen, or heavy lifting without the appropriate muscle engagement, as you discovered with your lying down exercises. But even carrying heavy loads, the spleen doesn't necessarily love that. So be mindful of that and tune in. How do you feel before and after doing something like that? If you do have to spend...
You hold your pelvic floor, literally, even if you just crunch your bum hole without your not engaging your glutes. If you're using your glutes, you're cheating. But if you just suck your bum hole up really seriously, at least you've got some tension. Because I've lifted, I'm so strong, gardening kind of strong and all that stuff. It's nothing. Growing 25, 30 kilo bags on my shoulders, all good. That's my thing. I'm that kind of functional strong. Never held things right.
And that's that was my experience as well. So I have been on an amazing journey with a DNS trainer. So that's dynamic neuromuscular stabilization. She teaches you how to use your body properly, because I'm so flexible, I was overusing my back instead of my legs. So my legs were actually really floppy and they weren't engaged. Like the spleen channel was just not switched on. So I could lift heavy things too, but it was my back rather than my deep core muscles that was doing the work there. So it's like there was a lot to be done for me in that department too.
All right. So lift, at least clench your bum hole, suck your bum hole up. I'm really serious, not being crude. That's that simple. But be mindful of not pulling your glutes tight at the same time.
And I would also add soft knees as well. So not locking the knees, because then we're actually using we're making sure that that muscle chain of that inside of the leg is actually active and providing support to the pelvic floor, because we know that we have all of those structures like nerves and muscles that travel up that way to the pelvic floor. But if we're not engaging that whole area, we're not giving additional support to the additional butthole stuff as well that you mentioned.
Okay, cool. So when you're standing, don't lock your knees out.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Very cool.
What else? So we've touched on the cooked and warm, the just checking in how you feel after lifting stuff, and how you feel with the engaging core support and leg support. I would also make sure that we have enough yin time to balance out the yang time of everything that we do, especially when we're juggling. What's that, sorry?
Rest.
Yes, rest. Yeah. Rest without consuming extra content. Like I think sometimes I know. Look, I'm telling myself I'm the worst for it. I'm like, I'll just read this book a little bit. It's like, put the book away. Yeah, that's right. But actually, like staring at the sky, staring at the ocean, meditating, even if it's 10 minutes a day of, get your bare feet on the earth, get grounded, because the spleen channel runs right down to the big toe. So just getting your feet planted down, just slowing things down can then help give you space to tune into your body, what your body's saying. Because I think sometimes we're so, so busy and so tied up in things that we miss those little whispers before they become a lot more insistent, shall we say. Yeah.
So we're resting. Okay. To replenish yin.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on about so many other things that we could be doing as well.
That's the thing. There's so much to it. But even if people do the core basics, like listen to the body, not eating and drinking cold stuff all the time, bringing more like ginger in, it's really going to head in the right direction from a place of prevention, which is all I'm all about. Yes, I've got this. The other thing is, since I've had this and I've been so vocal about it on socials and just in my everyday life, I have found so many women who have been literally putting up with bladder leakage for years. Whether they pee when they sneeze or whether they just can't hold a pee. It's so common, it's ridiculous. And I just want to say, ladies, if you're listening to this, that is so fixable. Go and see a Dr. Maz, or go and see a fanny physio. Go and see a fanny physio and get the full internal, get the diagnosis done, and then work out your treatment plan, because you don't have to put up with that.
Absolutely. And everyone's different. So everyone's an individual. So the reasons behind each person's prolapse or leakage will be slightly different. Like it could be overexertion, but it could also be emotional stress. So that's a whole other little topic I could go into. But the spleen can get beaten up by the liver system, which is responsible for handling and expressing our emotions. So sometimes, you know, it's all well and good to do the spleen nurturing things, but maybe we also need to do the liver calming things. And that's where learning a little bit more about this, or seeing someone who can help guide you in that respect and determine what's most appropriate, can be really helpful. But I do also have a little story about bladder leakage and Chinese herbs, if you'd like me to share.
And maybe do another call on liver.
Yeah, let's do it. Love to.
Another one about it. Anyway,
yeah,
go. Yes.
So this peeing. So my beautiful older greyhound, who I had before my current lovely greyhound. So this is beautiful.
Your current lovely greyhound.
Yeah, you know, my current lovely Stellis. This was Penny, also known as Nurse Penny. Everyone loved her so much. So she, in her later years, had spay incontinence, which is a thing when female dogs, after desexing, there can often be some damage to the structures in the pelvis, and they can get a little bit of dribbling sometimes after weaning, or sometimes when they're at rest or sleeping, there can just be a little dribble that comes out. Right. And I noticed with Penny, it started to happen as she got older. But there was one time when I was feeding her thawed out bones for cleaning her teeth, but they were still cold. And it started after that. So I was like, oh my goodness, I've broken my rule.
No cold.
No cold. And I was trying to bring it up to room temperature as much as possible, but, you know, while still being safe with everything. So I gave her a Chinese formula for nourishing the spleen, which has dried ginger, dried licorice root, ginseng, and another herb which we use to dry dampness. Sorted it out, like within a day, no more dribbling. And then I noticed there were times, if ever she went back into that, like a year or so later, we'd just give her that spleen formula, no more dribbling ever again. So it was such a simple thing. And I see on so many, I'm on a greyhound page where all the greyhound people share their stories. It's such a common thing. And it was such a simple thing to fix as well in Penny's case, and in many female dogs' cases as well.
Well, and so many female women's cases
Exactly.
as well. The peeing thing can be fixed. Go and see a professional who specialises in it. GPs sadly don't know shit about this. They really, people just go there and they go, no, yeah, you know, put up with it and here, take estrogen. No, don't do that. Go and get it checked properly. Go and see a fanny physio, and for me, things like acupuncture and Chinese herbs are a must. They're always part of my treatment protocol. So, yeah. Maz, that's been awesome.
Yay.
That's great core basics that people can work from for replacer prevention. And please go and get help if you need it. So how can people follow you and stuff like that? And you've got an ebook. Where will they go to get the ebook? Do you want to give us the address for that?
Yes. Do you have show notes, or shall I give you?
I do have show notes, but let's read it out now anyway for those who
yes.
Click the link to go to get to show notes.
Yes. So I have a website, balancedacupuncture.com.au. It's sorely in need of an update. So currently I've put the ebook on a landing page, which is not visible. So I will give you the link to download that ebook.
We'll do that.
I'm also on Insta, and I've been very, very much absent for the last 3 years, but I am planning my return, and I've got so much content to share. So that is Balanced with Dr. Maz on Insta. So I will be going back to that, and I'll be resurrecting my own podcast, which is Balanced Natural Health with Dr. Maz. There's one season that was released, which has a lot of these things that we talked about healthy digestion and how to manage stress and look after our nervous systems and all of that kind of stuff. So there's 15 episodes of that. So that's in all the usual places as well. So
the easiest thing might be is if you put the link in your bio on Insta, and if people go to Balanced by Dr. Maz.
With Dr. Maz. Yeah. Balanced with Dr. Yeah.
Balance or balance?
Balanced with a D. Actually, do you know how bad's this? I'm actually just going to check that. This is how much I've not been on socials recently.
Check to Balanced with Dr. Maz.
Here we go. Balanced with Dr. Maz, and there's underscores in between the words.
Yeah, but if you just Google it, you can find it if you just search it. There you go. I followed you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
So go to, and you're going to put a link there to that ebook that they can
I
download.
will. Yes, I will do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Matt.
Thanks,
And
Jen.
I'll have you, if you're up for it, I'll have you back another day and we can talk about
I
liver
would love that.
and emotions.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm up for that. Totally. That'd be
Yeah.
cool. Super
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you for my appointment tomorrow when you can do your thing with me again.
Lovely. Thanks, Jen. See you then.
See you everyone. Bye.